It's got real significant memories of just innocence, laughter, and I've really tried to sort of carry that through to my adult life. I felt the pressure to look a certain way. Sort of during that time of my teenager, I had somebody very close to me that was going through depression. For me, it was because I couldn't control that situation. I could control me, and that was my path, unfortunately. Actually, a dance school, and they would weigh us, and there is no reason why they need to weigh you at 12 years old. I think back then, depression wasn't talked about. I felt like, oh God, I don't want to be, sort of associated with somebody that's going through all those things. And
what changed?
Fitness. When she wasn't well with that, kind of like the passion and the desire to have that fulfillment from music, it just went. And around that time I think it was a Zumba class. I was like, oh, come on, let's go. And it took around 4 or 5 attempts. And then eventually we got in there. I cried afterwards, but we sat in the car and she was like, I can't believe how I feel. I feel me. I graduated. I was like, right, I'm ready to get into work, but I'm not ready to go to London. One of our projects at university was to actually produce a sort of self-promotion, like a CV. So it was actually a little box of extra strong mints.
Oh, nice.
But I relabeled it with my CV.
Yeah.
And I sent out probably over 100. When I eventually became creative director, I heard people saying, well, she must have slept with the boss.
Where did the initial idea come for the box?
It's always been there.
Welcome back to Seasoned Professional. I'm your host, Hannah Octavia. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce the remarkable Lucy Pinto. A brief trigger warning, we do discuss both disordered eating and mental health. Please take care while listening.
Alrighties. So, and it's Pinto, yes?
Yes.
Okay, lovely. All right, we good, Elliot?
Oh, hunky-dory.
Fabulous. Alrighty, so without further ado, I would love to welcome to the podcast Lucy Pinto. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Fabulous. So the first thing that we always do on Seasoned Professional is we take a look at a childhood picture of yourself. So, can you grab it off the wall there? I realize that's quite far now.
Yeah, let's give it a go, shall we?
Fabulous. So you can show that to the cameras. I must say, you have not changed. So for those of us who are just listening right now, can you give us a brief explanation of this photo you're holding?
Sure, absolutely. It's a picture of myself and my sister and 2 of our family friends. We were on holiday in Spain and we used to go to a specific place every year with this family. And they mean everything to me. We're still in touch now.
Yeah.
We still meet up all the time. But it's got real significant memories of just innocence, laughter. And I've really tried to sort of carry that through to my adult life because, as we know, life is tough sometimes. And I just sort of try to remind myself that, even though I want to be successful at work and do all these things, it's really important just to have fun. It's so it reminds me of that. It encompasses just like friendship, laughter, and just being silly, really.
Yeah. Amazing. Can I see it?
Yeah.
I feel like there's always that picture of you just in your bottoms. Like that's like such a classic childhood picture
isn't it?
Of just children in their bottoms. There's this one picture my brother and I were wearing just underwear and then I think like tights or something on our hands.
Oh yeah.
Something weird like that. Yeah.
Like your dad's pants on your head.
Yeah. It's like, how many pairs of underwear can I put on today? We're going to find out. That's fabulous. You can pop that up on the wall for us if you'd like. Alrighty. So who is older, you or your sister?
My sister is 2 years older.
Okay. And what was your relationship like growing up?
It was great. I mean, when we were kids, we were really lucky to grow up in the countryside. So our playground was our garden and the
Amazing.
woods. And we were playing all the time, making dens, making up stupid stories. And then we got to like teenage years. And because we're quite close in age, it's like, you're hanging around with that boy? No, I'm hanging around with that boy. And there was a bit of competition.
Yeah.
She would steal my clothes because I'm clearly more fashionable than her.
Of course.
But we never really... We didn't go, I hear quite a lot of people that really sort of fall out with their siblings, but we never really liked that. We just sort of, grew up as teenagers. But now she is my rock. Aww. She is everything to me. She's my best friend. She's like my going out partner. She's my mentor. She's my aspiration, and yeah, I think I feel pretty lost without her. So I feel very lucky to have that relationship, because I know a lot of people don't.
Would you have imagined that was your relationship when you were a kid?
No,
not
at all.
Did you ever get like jealous of each other?
No, not really. I think there was definitely a stage, because my sister's much more academic than me. You know, she just flew through school. Like, she didn't really have any problems with anything at all, and I was much more creative, hence where my line of work has kind of gone. So when I really struggled at school, like, I hated revision, I hated doing homework, I just wanted to do PE and be outside. So I think there was probably a little bit of resentment, but there wasn't competition as such. But it's interesting because obviously there's just the two of us, and we have a very different outlook on our upbringing from our parents.
That's so interesting.
We had quite different relationships with our mum and dad.
Yeah.
I was very much there with mum and wanted to help, and like when mum was cooking, I was always like stirring and like, can I make cakes with you? My sister was not interested in cooking at all. She was like head in a book. And she'd always talk to my dad, because my dad is just like this walking encyclopedia of knowledge.
Interesting.
They were, it wasn't sort of like me and mum, her and dad, but it felt kind of a bit like that in a way.
Yeah.
And my mum lent on me a lot when she wasn't well.
I see.
Yeah, then roles just kind of reversed when we got older.
Interesting. And were your parents together when you were younger? And
still am.
That's amazing.
That's right. Yeah.
And what did they do as for a living?
So my mum was a teacher. She's retired now. And my dad was an architect. He's retired as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, even in that sense, like teaching's a little bit more free-flowing. Yeah. Architecture, perhaps. Still some creativity to it, but perhaps a little bit more
methodical, strategic. Yeah, absolutely.
Like academic in many different ways.
Very much so.
And so you said in school that you were a little bit more, doing the outdoorsy stuff and being a little bit more creative. What would you say, how would you describe yourself as a student, do you think?
Oh, interesting question. In a weird way, I was kind of like leader of the pack. That sounds very big-headed.
No, not at all.
I think it was also because I was just very risk averse.
I see.
As well.
I see.
Like, if somebody said don't touch that, I'd probably go and do it. But I'd kind of always get away with it. I was never nasty, but kind of pushing boundaries a little bit. But at the same time, I was quite quiet. I think I would sort of sit back and like, wait for a lot of people to start a conversation in the room and kind of like suss people out before I sort of go in and voice my opinion and just talk for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But I was like captain of the netball team, hockey team. I was really into my sports at school, so I think that kind of gives you a sort of slight of a status at school as well. And I just had lots of mates and wasn't really sort of just hanging out with the girls. It was always the boys, and I just had a good time actually at school.
Nice. So very positive experience from what I'm hearing.
I think so.
Yeah. And you and your sister, did you ever, like, I have a little brother, and it's like that like little brother syndrome where he never gets in trouble. Is that what happened to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And my sister got up to a lot of things as well.
Yeah.
Far worse than me. But yeah, I got away with a lot. I don't know how, but
it's little siblings.
I think it is.
Yeah.
And also, the parents have gone through it once and like, oh God, we'll just let them go.
Yeah, it's like, I can't discipline again.
Yeah.
We're just going to move on.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's hurt.
No.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And you said you grew up in like a countryside kind of area?
Rural area.
Okay.
Rural, yeah.
And was it a small village?
Yeah, tiny. I mean, even I'd say as far as a hamlet.
Oh
Very,
my
very
gosh.
small. I don't know what the population is. My parents actually still are there in our family
Wow.
home, which is amazing. So when I say I'm going home, I really am like
Going home. Yeah.
I think I was like 22 months when my parents moved there, so that's all I know. And
that's insane.
they talked a couple of years ago about downsizing because obviously they're getting older, and the thought of them selling the family home is heartbreaking. Obviously needs must. But they've decided to stay. They're like, we can't leave.
No,
My
we
dad's
can't.
Like, any time I'm leaving is out when I'm in a box. So,
Oh my God. You have to rip me out.
yeah, exactly. But you don't appreciate it when you're younger. When you're a teenager, and I mean, we weren't that far from sort of like the main city, but we had to get a bus, and buses were only like once every 2 days. But you don't appreciate until you're older and then you sort of come back and go, God, we were so lucky to be able to
Yeah.
literally walk out the back of our house and you're in the woods and have that freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, times are different now. We were so free and safe, going out on our bikes all the time, meeting up with all our local friends and just going out for hours making camps. And then, you know, when you're a teenager, that kind of like grows and evolves a little bit, and
Yeah.
going out with teenage mischief, and it was just great. It was,
Yeah.
I feel really fortunate to be able to have that.
Yeah. And if you remember from your childhood, perhaps like 10 and under, you said that you made up a lot of stories with your sister. Was there a particular story that you really have fond memories of?
There's so many. There's so many. My sister was really imaginative. Like I said, she was a real bookworm, and she sort of used to make up this story about this character called Foxy Loxy.
Nice.
So where my parents' house was on the side, it used to sort of go down into like a bit of a den, and then go out to the wild woods. And she'd always make up these stories about Foxy Loxy, and just like, remember, Lucy, you can't go down there because Foxy will get you. And I believed it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I was like, Foxy Loxy's like, he's a real character. He's real. He's going to come and get me. And there was lots of stories like that.
Yeah.
Fond memories.
That's so funny. Do you talk about Foxy Loxy anymore?
We do. I bring it up and taking the piss basically out of it. 'Cause I'm like, you were just weird growing up. Because I was very much like out with the boys on the bike and doing gymnastics.
Yeah.
And she was at home like with her head in a book and making up weird stories, and you know, growing up as a bit like, you're a bit odd, but actually she's just like creative in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's nice to see, like, even though you were so different, you came so together now later in life, which is quite nice. And in your childhood, did you have any specific career aspirations? Like, what was your dream at that young age?
Oh, young age was probably to be, you know, a dancer or a gymnast. My father would say, whenever we'd go out, even in restaurants, I was doing cartwheels. I think I was one of those annoying kids that just wouldn't sit still. And I did ballet from like the age of 3 or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I loved how it made me feel. I loved performing. It's funny because we did so many shows when we were younger, just, you know, around the local villages and stuff like that, and then bigger shows in London. But I'd be really confident on the stage dancing.
Yeah.
But then when it came to anything vocalising it, I would really be interested, and I just wouldn't feel confident in that at all. But get me in front of 1,000 people dancing and I'd be fine. I really loved that.
So very, like, bodily confident, like very physically confident.
Well,
perhaps.
I don't know if it was. That's actually quite interesting. I've never thought about it like that, actually. I probably wouldn't say I was body confident because of then what sort of happened later in my life. But I knew that I could move.
Yeah.
And I think I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I wanted people to sort of see that you can get up and do that as well, whatever sort of shape, size, age you are. It's just cool to move.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you remember how you'd, like, after you were on the stage performing, do you remember how you'd feel immediately after?
Oh yeah, you're buzzed.
Yeah, you're completely...
Absolutely buzzed. It's the same as like teaching classes now. You just get a real euphoric feeling, and I just wish that you could bottle that and give it to people.
And how did your parents view this dream of yours?
I mean, my mum was kind of always backstage when we were doing shows, like helping out and you know, sort of organising things, I guess, for other people. So she didn't really see me doing many performances as such. My dad would always make my costumes, which were I always have the
That's so
the
cool.
best costumes because he's just so creative, and then everybody would want to borrow them.
Yeah.
I think they just wanted me to be happy. There was never really any pressure, but equally not much support.
How do you mean?
I'm not saying that I could have been a professional gymnast or dancer by any means at all, but I think if there was a little bit more encouragement, could have gone a different way.
Interesting.
Yeah. Maybe.
So it was almost that perhaps a little bit more push could have seen you a little bit further. And it's like a bit of a balancing act.
Yeah, and that's so hard for parents, isn't it?
And
like you don't want to be like the pushy mum, but you don't want to be the one that doesn't care either. So
Exactly.
I think they were like bang in the middle of that.
Yeah. And like, I suppose with some children, if you are too pushy, they shut down.
Yeah.
So it just totally depends on
The individual.
Exactly. That's really cool that he made all your costumes, though. Do you
so
still have them?
good. No.
Oh.
Just looking back on fond memories of him, like there's so many I can remember. Yeah, and he also made my sisters, and I can't remember what it was. Like maybe it was Jason and the giant beanstalk or something
Yeah.
like that. But she was playing a cockerel. That's probably not in that show, is it? But he made this incredible headpiece.
Yeah.
And it was like, God, that should be in a museum, Dad. Like, so skilled. It was brilliant.
So bring me to kind of high school.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there? Are we thinking about the future? Are we just kind of being a teenager? What's going on?
Probably just being a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I was still doing gymnastics and I was competing at a amateur kind of level at that stage.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of training when a lot of my friends were kind of just going out having fun as well, which was great because I loved it. For me, it wasn't really a chore.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed it. But there was definitely a stage where I felt the pressure to look a certain way and to have the kind of, the right type of body. And
Mm-hmm.
as a teenager, that was kind of the 90s for us. So it was like heroin chic, so everybody was super skinny.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely had an influence
Mm-hmm.
on me and probably still does to this day, because I don't think you can really ever get rid of that kind of
Mm-hmm.
feeling or mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken a lot of learnings,
Mm-hmm.
I think. But I, at the same time that I'm very much someone that can just crack on with it. I don't like to dwell on things or sort of bore people with my problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm which is probably not a good thing, but very good at hiding things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, that's definitely probably my teenage years. Looking like I'm okay on the surface, but probably underneath I was suffering a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And was it the pressure specifically referring to like the heroin chic body and being skinny and all that kind of stuff? Was it from your coaches? Was it a society thing? Was it just kind of yourself putting that pressure on you?
Yeah, I think maybe a mixture of all of them, all of the above really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that, I was never diagnosed as having an eating disorder, but it was something that we knew that's what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of during that time of my teenager, I had somebody very close to me that was going through depression.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit the family quite hard.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was because I couldn't control that situation. I could control me,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my path, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And my coaches were great and actually really supportive. They recognised what was going on.
Yeah.
The pressure, though, to still perform and look a certain way when you're a gymnast is really tough.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to go to Tring Summer School, which was actually a dance school,
Mm-hmm.
and they would weigh us. And I started going there when I was about 12. Yeah, 12.
Uh-huh.
There is no reason why they need to weigh you at 12 years old
No.
for a summer school.
Yeah, no.
So a lot of things like that stuck in my head. And also, my mum was on a diet from God knows when, from what I can remember, and all I can remember her saying is, I can't eat this, and I can't eat that. And yeah, it really did affect me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. I think, even now I joke that like, oh, if something terrible will happen, I just won't eat for a few days and then I'll be skinny again.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's weird.
Mm.
It's weird to think about it because like I actually mean it,
Yeah.
which is this weird thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like all the unspoken things that people say, or in the case of your mom being like, oh, I can't eat that, I can't eat that. It's like there's so many things that people say without meaning it that can like impact people so much.
Yeah.
And during that time, did you ever express this idea that you had to, like specifically when your close family member or friend was with depression, did you have any escape? Like you had the control of the eating, but did you have any sort of other escape at that time?
Not really. I mean, I think when I wasn't at home, that was my escape because it wasn't, sort of present then. But always in the back of your mind, you're worried about them. You're questioning when you're coming home is, what are you going to be facing? And for a young teenager, that's a lot to take on. And And sort of, tapped on it earlier, me and my sister were very different when we were younger, and I was very much there, like, I want to help people. And the person who was suffering lent on me a lot through that. And obviously at that young age, you're like, I just want to make that person better. And just tried to do everything I could. Whereas my sister was very much, it's the fight or flight situation, isn't it? And she flew. She's like, I can't handle this. Or maybe she chose not to understand it, or it just wasn't right for her. But now she completely understands it. I think also because she has gone through things herself and her partner, so she can relate to it so much more and empathize. Whereas growing up, she had no empathy.
I see.
Zero. Not that we saw.
Yeah.
And I felt very much at like the beck and call of that person, and that was fine, because that's, you just want to make sure that person's okay.
And how old were you at that time?
Started when I was 12, which is when my eating disorder happened as well. So everything was like a catalyst of that, really.
And at the age of 12, did you have like a full understanding of what was happening to this person?
No, not at all. And I think back then, depression wasn't talked about. And I mean, I'm kind of ashamed to admit it now, but I hid that from a lot of people because I was ashamed, and because it wasn't talked about. I felt like, oh God, I don't want to be, sort of associated with somebody that's going through all those things, and that happens to other people, and it's not until sort of, like in the last 5 years that it's actually been accepted to say that it's okay not to be okay, and that's great, because it's it's opened the door to so many people that have been vulnerable, and there's so much more help now as well. I mean, back then there was literally nothing, and we tried so many different avenues, NHS, private, alternative medication, and just there's no support, and you are very much, when you are the victim of that, treated almost like a robot. Oh, just try this, just try that, and they don't really want to get to the root of the problem.
It's more like a mask.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And did the person in your life, were they open about their struggles, or?
Yes and no. I mean, we can say it was my mother. We can just say it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for being like, that's it. Yeah, she's very open now, which is great. I think at the time, herself as well was embarrassed about the sort of whole situation. But she's very, very open-minded now. She wants to help people, and she recognises it as well in others, and said, you thought about trying this, and she's a real advocate for people in terms of like, just talk and talk, and she can talk. She can talk a lot, which is great, and that's what helps her as well. We have to understand that there's no sort of one written rule for one person. Everyone's individual, and therapy might work, it might not work for you, but you've got to understand there's so many different options, and never give up as well.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad to hear that she's now such an advocate for this thing, and like is able to talk about it in a way that she feels more confident in it. And so you were 12 years old, we're kind of going through this rough period in your life. How did we kind of move out of this area? So you were being relied on a lot at that time. What changed? Because I think I know what you're going to say.
Fitness.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, I was always moving as a child, and as you know, I was very much into dance and gymnastics. And it wasn't really until I went to university, I think. I mean, I was studying, my degree was graphic design, so I kind of wear two hats. So I'm a creative director, and I own a fitness studio as well. But my degree was in graphic design. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. I was determined to sort of get into, like, at the time it was CDs, they always had these amazing album covers. Like, I was probably the only person that would actually open them up and read inside and look at the amazing design. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And then as in my second year at uni, and that's when you go into like flat shares, and I was like, right guys, we're going out for a run. My flatmates were like, what? I'm over, blah, blah. I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
And I would train regularly, not excessively, but just really enjoy the process of it. And then my friends would start to come, and then more people, and they're like, oh, you should be a PT. I'm like, nah, don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to be creative. And I was like, oh. actually,
Actually.
why not? So
Yeah.
while I was doing my degree, I did my level 2 and 3 personal training exams.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily do anything with it in the first year because then I was finishing my final year at uni, and then went straight into work after university. And I was fortunate to work pretty much like right next to Trafalgar Square in London. And there was a fitness studio next door, and I used to go there just as a member.
Yeah.
And I just started having conversations with a couple of people that I knew then and said, "Oh, do you want any trainers?" I'd never taught a class then. And they're like, "Yeah, come in for an audition." I was like, "Oh my God, an audition."
An audition.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I think, as I say, the rest is history.
Amazing. And just pedaling back a little bit, with the creative director, or sorry, not the creative, with your graphic design course that you took, was it literally just reading that CD case that ignited it? Or was there something more?
I think
It was that?
It was definitely that. It was like...
And what age were you?
Thing. Oh God, really young.
Yeah.
It was probably actually even a tape case.
Oh my gosh.
I loved the fact that, words from music can then be taken into this visual creation.
Yeah.
And everybody's interpretation of that is different. This is the amazing thing about art. It's so subjective as well. But it was definitely a catalyst in it. Yeah.
That's cool. It's funny how such a small thing literally ignited your university experience and like exactly what you want to be.
Yeah.
And with the fitness, because as I was doing some research on you, and hopefully this is correct, but I read that fitness also really helped your mom. So talk me through that. How did you help her with your knowledge?
Yeah, so Mum's always been one of those people that's like, I'm going to try this diet on Monday. I'm going to go to Zumba. And I'm going to go to yoga, and I'll never really stick at anything. But I definitely get my love of music and dancing from my mum. Like, I remember growing up and, making cakes with her in the kitchen and the radio being on. We're just having a little boogie. Like, she just loved dancing so much.
Yeah.
And when she wasn't well, that, kind of like the passion and the desire to have that fulfillment from music, it just went. It completely, there was nothing really there at all. And that's when we knew something wasn't quite right. And again, just wanting to help her and just getting like doors closed from, the medical side of things, or like, what interventions can we do to help her? And we try so many different things. And I remember going to like an aerobics class with her years and years ago when I was like 5 or something like that. I just remember like seeing her just love it and just have it literally belly laughing and probably getting the steps wrong or going the wrong way, but who cares? She's just having so much fun. And around that time there was, I think it was a Zumba class that was on sort of like in one of the local halls. I was like, Mum, come on, let's go. And it took around 4 or 5 attempts to get her there. One, she was like, no, I can't leave the house, that's fine, okay. And didn't want to put too much pressure on her. And then one time we just sat in the car park, that's fine, came back home. And then eventually we got in there and I just had a chat with the trainer and just said, brief little bit of history about Mum. We stayed, and when we came back out, I cried afterwards. But we sat in the car and she was like, I can't believe how I feel. I feel me. And I was just like, whoa. For a young child to see somebody who is your mother and you adore and you love and you care for so much, going from rock bottom to saying those words, it literally blew me away. Like, even now I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because it was so powerful. And I was like, shit, people need to know about this. So it was actually kind of like that really kind of just made me go like, Christ, okay, I need to do something with this. I really want people to find their true voice in whatever direction that is, but movement's got to be a part of it.
And how old were you at that time?
I think I was around, I think they were my last year of school, so 16 actually. 16, yeah.
That's incredible just to hear like the chi, like I'm finally me again.
Yeah.
And it's like that one thing that she probably hadn't done in years just brought her right back to who she was.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
Really, that's amazing. So your mum is on the mend, and you're going off to university. Are you like far away from home? What's the situation?
No, I went to Southampton University, so it's like an hour away.
Okay.
But I never came home.
No, you were like, I'm rid of them. It's time.
Had great flatmates.
Yeah.
Like the social scene was insane. It was brilliant, and I only came home for Christmas. So.
You were ready to be on your own.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. And you said that you got a job right after university.
Yeah.
How did you manage to swing that? Because myself, I find it so hard nowadays to find the first thing.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing you did, and how'd you get it?
So when I graduated, I was like, right, I'm ready to get into work, but I'm not ready to go to London just yet. I think I still had that, like, I live in a village kind of vibe, and I'm not quite ready for that, the big city.
Yeah.
So I literally hit the yellow pages. I don't think they even exist now, do they? And phoned all of the local advertising agencies up, even print companies, just saying, I've just graduated, got a graphic design degree, I really want to come and have some work experience, or do you have any jobs available, etc. And one of our projects at university was to actually produce a sort of self-promotion, like a CV, but like a physical thing. Because obviously I wanted to get into graphic design, mine was more like a typographic project. So it was actually a little box of extra strong mints.
Oh, nice.
But I relabeled it with my CV.
That's cool.
But I did it in words talking about small but mighty.
Yeah.
So having come back to the strong mint element, but also emphasising that this is what I can offer you. And my dad, bless him, because the local shop ran out of these extra strong mints, was literally scouting the country, trying to find all of these mints so I could then rebrand them all.
Yeah.
And I sent out probably over 100.
That's so cool.
Sent out over 100 of them.
Yeah.
Out of 100, I probably got 10 responses.
Okay.
And then one of those responses was a small design agency in Farnham. So it's a small village, but like 15 miles from where my parents lived. Went in for an interview and got the job.
Wow. And what was the description? What was your responsibilities of that job?
So it was junior graphic designer. And the agency did everything from small advertising campaigns to big billboards. They were sort of more in the industrial engineering sector. So not a subject that really kind of like blew my mind, but in terms of the innovation for getting customer experience, I was like, I'm all over this. So, and it was the perfect job to start off with because they were brilliant. Alistair and Julia, I'll never forget them. They were so great to me as well. Like they gave me full creative artistic license to do anything, and some of the times I had to be reined in, which was fine. But because it was a small agency, I got to experience a lot of it, like actually the back end as well, about how to run a business. And it inspired me a lot, actually.
That's amazing. Wow. And because I love the mint idea. That's so like I feel like that would just stick in someone's head.
Yeah. I mean, you think about companies that get CVs all the time. It's either in their inbox, or probably more just in their inbox now rather than something coming through. But back then it would have been a physical letter. So I was like, okay, so how can I make someone go, oh, what's this?
Yeah.
And something like that definitely does. So.
It makes you stop and be like, oh, this person put in a little bit of extra effort. And what were the kind of was there a specific project that you did back then that was like you were very proud of, or that you got a lot of praise for?
We were working for a shopping centre. It was in Norwich though, so it was miles away. Excuse me. But we did all the hoardings for it in the advertising, and also a sort of like local newsletter. And they gave me the responsibility of that, which was quite huge actually, because it was the first time I actually saw my work physically out there in the big wide world. I'm like, oh god, I've got to make sure that the spelling's right. And but it was a project I was really proud of. And it got a lot of praise, which was good. I feel like a muscle in my throat.
Oh God. It's so annoying when that happens.
It's like, I feel like there's not many other mediums where you're going to be talking this much.
No,
Yeah.
that is true.
It's true.
Now I'm going like.
Maybe it's something there. There's something
Yeah. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. This place. Are you allergic to dust by any chance?
No.
Okay, well, it's a little dusty.
I know it's like living on the farm. It's awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand where all the dust comes from.
Oh.
Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It's the road. It's the pollution. of the road.
Fabulous. Delightful.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Just remember that when you're sleeping.
know, right? Take a nice deep breath.
Yeah.
I tell you what, well, before we get back into the swing, I'm going to fill this up.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's all right.
Fabulous.
What's up? What's up?
Enjoying the live podcast.
Very fun.
Yeah. I've learned my duties.
Sit and be quiet.
You have been told.
Yeah. Make sure the power stays on and
exactly.
let the talent do all the hard work.
Thank you.
You will.
Lovely, fabulous. I believe my last question was how you felt the first time you saw your work.
Yeah, I can still remember it now. Actually, it's a weird feeling. Can't really describe it, but it's like, wow, I've achieved something.
Mhm.
Like, I think internally proud. Yeah.
And how long are you with this company for?
I was with ABB for about 5.5 years. Actually.
Oh my-
Yeah.
That's really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably stayed there 3 years too long.
Yeah.
But it was comfortable.
Yeah.
Even though it was a very small agency
Mm-hmm.
and there wasn't necessarily anywhere for me to go,
Mm-hmm.
they were just so good to me. They were like a family. They really supported me. My personal development there was like exceptional. I think that, again, like I was really fortunate to have that as a first job, and they weren't even advertising. It was just like the right time, right place.
Yeah. And it was kind of the right connection that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the kind of the catalyst for you leaving there?
I was like, London's calling.
Is London... How old were you at the time?
London was definitely calling. So it must be 26. I
Okay.
think, about
Okay.
26. Yeah, around that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to do more, and I've always loved magazines. And I was like, okay, I actually just want to work for a publishing house. And spoke about it a fair bit to friends that worked in London, and they're like, you've just got to come. You've just got to come, like, more money, more experience, also about personal development as well, because ABB were great, but, the creative director was straight above me, so there was nowhere else I could go.
I see.
And, it was just the right time.
Amazing. And so you moved down to London. Do you go without any sort of job security?
No, I didn't. I got the job before.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's definitely my advice. It's like, don't shut all the doors. Make sure you got a job before you had your notice in.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely do your due diligence before.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get that second job?
Again, actually, I just looked up all the agencies. I mean, the competition in London is vast as well. And although I had sort of 5 years experience, I was definitely still seen as a junior. And then sort of trying to get into publishing, so magazines. I hadn't had that experience. I worked on sort of like smaller local rags and stuff like that, but nothing of the scale of what I ended up working on.
And what company or what was kind of the job that was picked up afterwards?
So my first job at Redwood Publishing, was working for, it was more of like a catalogue actually, so it was Very, which is clothing.
Yeah.
So that was my first job with them. That actually folded quite quickly.
Oh no.
But then I moved on to Boots Health and Beauty, so Boots the Chemist.
Yeah.
They have their in-store magazine,
Okay.
which I worked on for a fair few years and loved it, absolutely loved it, yeah.
And for someone who doesn't know a huge amount of how that world works, what were your responsibilities at the time?
Yeah, so my role on Boots, so I was senior designer at the time when I started, and so it's obviously working a lot with the clients, so obviously Boots, And their magazine itself, they kind of, obviously they have their shopping pages of products that, you know, they're trying to push for clients to buy, but there's lots of stories in there about like real life stories, makeovers, you know, what's in your shopping basket today. So we would get the brief in from a client and have to fulfill that from a creative perspective. And again, we were really fortunate actually that the client, they trusted us, so we had a lot of free reign on that. And I built a lot of experience of getting contacts from photographers, stylists, models. So we used to do all the castings for the models as well, which was great and fun when it was like babies as well. Yeah. Quite short-lived, but good fun anyway. And yeah, so we'd actually, you know, design the physical pages themselves, send them off to repro as well. So I obviously got an understanding of like retouching and the production side of magazines. It was a great job, loved it.
It sounds like you had a lot of hands in all the different like areas of this coming together.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting because I'm like kind of in the process of figuring out what I want to do with my life. And I keep like typing in like, oh, creative producer, creative director, creative anything.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know exactly what it is. Like, do you think that creative jobs in terms of the ones you had yourself, do you think they're the same in every industry, or do you think that there's a little bit of variety? Because obviously if you're an accountant, your job description is pretty the same. Yeah. But do you think there's a little bit more variation in what you'd actually do?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And you know, it all depends on sort of like you were saying, you know, the field that you want to be in. But being a designer on magazines is very different to, you know, being a designer in film. So my kind of world evolved, and I ended up working on fitness magazines as well. And then unfortunately, because times have changed quite a lot of magazines have folded over the years, and I wanted to get more into sort of film and production, creative direction in that way. But I don't think I would have been able to go down that path if I hadn't had the experience that I did on like physical white paper as such. Yeah. It teaches you real intimate skills and having that knowledge as well of what needs to be produced for somebody to physically look at on a page, and then comparing that to something that needs to be looked at a screen. It gives you that sort of like 360 knowledge. But the creative world's amazing, and I'm really glad that you're like delving into that world, because it's just really exciting, and the possibilities are endless.
That's what I'm. Yeah, it's almost too vast. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know.
How do I narrow it down?
Yeah, I'm like, what do I choose? I don't know. It's too much. And I had another question, but it just flew to my brain there for a moment. It's gonna come back. Oh gosh, I hate when that happens. Yeah. Anyway, during your time doing this, was the fitness still kind of going throughout?
Yeah, very much so.
So was it more of, were you still like doing the PT, or was it just kind of like your own free time? That's what you would do?
I'd always train. I would, because we weren't living in London at the time, we were sort of still in Surrey. So I'd have to get around sort of 6:30 train. So I'd get up at 5 pretty much every morning.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a bit of an insomniac though, so I don't really sleep. I think it's a bit pointless. So I'd rather just get up and train and do something. So I generally do that, and then I go to the office, and then I would still be teaching here at lunchtimes.
Okay.
So I'd be teaching a lot of boxing classes, strength classes, and the studio that I worked at had like a real variety on their timetable, and I'd just get involved in everything. Really. I loved it, and started to pick up quite a few PT clients, and I really enjoyed that. But it's very different to teaching classes, and it's not for everybody. You know, you've got some PTs that don't even want to go anywhere near classes, and vice versa. But I enjoyed the sort of the feeling of helping people in different ways. You know, from a community perspective, and then on the one-to-one. So I really embraced it. I loved it.
Did you ever feel pressure to have to choose between your creative career and your fitness career?
No, it's funny, no one's ever asked me that actually, and so I've never really thought about it. I think it's only been recently that I've thought about that, since obviously things have developed with, you know, opening my own studio, and where I put my time and my energy. You know, do I want to be doing 2 jobs in 10 years' time? I'm not quite sure. So it's something that's been at the, forefront of my mind recently.
And it sounds like what you're describing just sounds like you had endless energy. I'm like, how did you have the time? It's pretty much my question. How did you have the time to do it all?
Do you know what? When you really love something, it doesn't feel like work. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the publishing world it's tough. It's super tough. I mean, my partner Giles, who I'm still with, we've been together a long time, he barely saw me when I first started working in London. And getting the 6:30 train, getting home at 9:10:30 and doing it again and again and again and again, and it becomes Groundhog Day. And I think unless you really enjoy that work, why the hell would you do it? I mean, the first couple of years I wasn't getting paid particularly great money, but for me it was the experience of working for a really well-known agency on my CV, so then I could just push myself and learn every aspect of it and try and sort of understand the process and then decide where I wanted to go. But working sort of 2 jobs effectively, I just loved it. Like teaching classes, it just still doesn't feel like work to me.
Yeah.
I get such a buzz off of it. I get to train at the same time half the time as well, and doing one-to-ones is it's something I feel really passionate about because I actually don't really advertise that much these days, but I don't advertise myself as like a weight loss coach. It's not something I believe in. Whereas I'm more of a sort of, I guess, confidence coach. A lot of people will come to the studio or contact us saying, I'm going on holiday in 6 weeks' time. I want to lose weight. I'm like, yeah, it's not, I'm the wrong person for you. I want people to see that long-term mind shift. And I think when you end up working with people and they can actually fulfill that themselves, because you're not doing that work for them, they're doing it, it's super powerful. Yeah.
So it's almost like you don't just offer the physical, it's like you're building the confidence as well, which is quite nice. It's like, yeah, you're selling them a PT session, but it's like selling them a new lease on potentially the future, which is also quite nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And when you were commuting, you're 6:30, get home at 9:30, did you ever have the fear that other things in your life would slip away?
Yeah, and I think my relationship suffered. Definitely, like I said, Charles never saw me, and I would quite often go out on a Thursday. Thursdays were known as like Media Friday.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
out for beers after work. You wouldn't have had dinner and you end up drinking too much and missing the last train, and somehow I still managed to go to work the next day.
Oh, God.
It's not something that I would advise.
Yeah.
I had a great time doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did, and I don't think I really noticed at the time because I was, particularly in my late 20s, early 30s, I was so career driven that I didn't notice. I wasn't putting much effort into our relationship, and it's definitely suffered at times for sure. Yeah, and I, even certain like family events I did have to turn down because when you work in publishing, and it's not every publishing house, don't worry people, but when I was working on a smaller magazine, the expectation of working weekends, it was definitely there. I mean, I probably didn't put boundaries up when I should have done, and I very much was like, if my editor was going to email me at 12 o'clock at night, I would respond. Whereas actually, we're not doing brain surgery; it could have waited. But I've always been that person that if somebody contacts me, I'll get back to them straight away. And I've soon realised that it's fine to wait.
Yeah, they can wait a second.
Yeah.
I think that's a very common thing because you feel like, especially as you said, this was a huge agency. It was kind of the start of your career in a sense, especially in the big city. Yeah. You don't want to let them down almost.
Oh, absolutely.
How long were you commuting? When did you finally make the move to London?
we never moved into London as
Yeah.
such. We were more Richmond. So I would still say I commuted the entire time, which was 15 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I,
And actually, yeah,
oh
yeah.
my God.
But the crazy thing is now, because obviously since lockdown, a lot of people work from home.
Mm-hmm.
So the thought of doing that, I'm like, how on earth did everybody do it? But we just did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were told what to do and we did it. But, you know, now I have to go into London a handful of times a month for shoots. And I come back, I'm exhausted. I'm absolutely exhausted. But we just did it back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no other option. You're slugging away with everyone else who does it.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre to think, even before like COVID, it's like the option wasn't there. So you
Yeah.
never even thought about it.
No.
But now it's like, I guarantee the job, well, obviously the job that you once did is
Yeah.
now just a few times.
Yeah. Hybrid. Absolutely.
Which is just,
Wild, isn't
it's
it?
insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. So you were at this career for 15 years. You were at this agency for 15 years. What did you do next?
So I was in London for about 15 years. Within that time, I moved around to different agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually don't even really know how I managed to do it, but I managed to land my passion for fitness with my then other career. So I worked on Health and Fitness magazine, Men's Health, Runners World,
Wow.
all of the fitness mags that you can
Yeah.
think of. I probably touched on some way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I was in my element because
Yeah.
when you work in an agency, you get lots of freebies as well. So I
Okay.
literally never brought trainers for the last 20 years.
Oh,
which
gorgeous.
Is just, like, amazing.
Yeah.
But just the experience of actually working with like true athletes as well and
Mm-hmm.
getting a connection with them was just like, the experience has been incredible. I've met some like real humble
Mm-hmm.
people and following their journeys has been really aspirational to
Mhm.
me. And I became freelance because actually the magazine I was working on at the time sort of slightly complicated. They didn't go into administration, but the editor basically brought a magazine, so it happens quite often in publishing. So although I was full time, I was freelance,
Interesting.
and I then chose to work from home,
Ah.
which was just genius.
Yeah.
Because where Giles and I were at the time, we had a little outbuilding, so I would train clients from our little gym.
Mhm.
You know, in the morning, in between, because I work from home, it wasn't like you have to sit at your desk from 9 to 5. There was so much freedom and flexibility
Mm-hmm.
for me, and because I think it was a choice
Yeah.
rather than when lockdown happened. You know, a lot of people were forced into that situation, and not everybody has the right setups at home. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
I took my time getting into that, making sure our spare room was like my office, and I absolutely loved it. I really
Yeah.
loved it, and just started teaching a lot more on the fitness side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And really quickly, popping back to, you said that you met some really influential people. Is there a specific person you have in mind that kind of influenced you up to this day? Or any stories that you remember that are very aspirational?
Amazing people that I've met. I hate name dropping. But in terms of like athletes, Jessica Ennis is just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Heptathlete of ours, and you know, she's had children since, and then she competed. What was it, like 6 months after she had her children? Something like that.
Oh
It's
my
ridiculous.
gosh.
But just the determination and dedication that she's got to her sport,
Mm-hmm.
but also being a real advocate for women,
Mm-hmm.
was a real kind of like light bulb moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I, you know, been teaching at this gym for so many years, and although I loved it and I really enjoyed it, and there was a real mixture of people that came along, it was very much the same kind of ethos.
Mm-hmm.
Get them in, beast them, get them out. And I was like, I loved that, it's fine at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't really educate myself enough about actually the sort of mindset of everything and like championing people,
Mm-hmm.
in particular women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was very much a kind of like bros gym, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Exactly, don't you? So a lot of women didn't want to go into the weights area, and everyone's like cardio. I'm like, oh, screw cardio, girls. Come and lift some weights. Or if you want to do cardio, let's box.
Yeah.
Like, let's actually find your inner confidence
Mhm.
or find a really positive way of like releasing some stress and some tension. So she was definitely somebody that I looked up to and like still do to this day, because she's fantastic, and she's released a lot of apps about training around your menstrual cycle. And you know, again, talking about how resistance training is really important for women starting at a young age. It's never too late, but get on it, and definitely instrumental.
And speaking about being a woman in the fitness industry, and also because you were in a pretty high position in the agencies, were you ever met with little pushback because of the fact that you're a woman?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, in both industries. You know, when I eventually became creative director, I heard people saying, well, she must have slept with a boss. Like, seriously, I wasn't doing it because I'm good at my job.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't really fancy him anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
Like, I'm actually okay.
yeah, precisely. But I'm like, would you have even considered that if I was a guy? Definitely not.
No.
Definitely not. And, you know, a lot of this was before the kind of Me Too stage. And I worked with very well-known photographers that just a lot of the stuff that went on wouldn't be acceptable to this day. It just got brushed under the surface.
And that's just, the people who said that, were they men or women?
Men.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose they're trying to make themselves feel better. Is that
Yeah, or, you know, I think particularly in the agency, it was because publishing, and it still is actually, and so is the film industry, it's a very male-dominated industry. You look at a lot of all the top directors, they're all men. It's only been in the last 5 years where women are actually finding a place. And, you know, some people might say that, I'm like, God, you're so pro-women's rights. I'm like, I'm not, but we are equal. It's 50-50 in this world. Like, let us have a place. And if you look at actually the countries that did really well during COVID, they're led by women.
Yeah.
I think that says it all.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, we've had many a conversation about that one.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I wonder what the difference is.
Yeah.
Did it ever feel, because obviously you grew up, like you said, you know, always hang out with the guys and the girls, like you didn't really have this separation where you had to be like, I'm not hanging out with the boys, like, ew. Yeah. It was very much everyone together.
Yeah.
Do you think that benefited you in the long run, being able to be confident around men and speak your voice and share your opinions despite that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've still got a really good group of male friends now, and I don't treat them any differently. And I'm not a typical girly girl either. I actually can't sit there and talk about makeup. It's just boring. It's great if you want to, that's fine, but that's not for me. Guys can talk about that as well, it's fine. But I think growing up I did see myself as like one of the boys. You know, I was quite happy, like, you know, rolling around in the mud and going out my BMX, but then also I had my kind of dancing, so I sort of had that feminine side as well. I've got a really good relationship with men, and I'm not afraid to voice my opinion either, and I think they should too. I do think that there's been a risk with, going back to the Me Too situation, that a lot of men actually are afraid now to talk to women. I find that really, really sad, because there's nothing wrong with saying hi to somebody on the street. It doesn't mean that you're doing it in a perverse or sexual way at all. It's just like, hi, how are you? Fine. You know, I have male friends that feel like they almost have to cross the street now because they're afraid, in case they might look at a girl, that they're gonna, you know, something bad's gonna happen about that. And I do find it really sad, and it is hard to get that balance in a world where there is freedom of speech. And where people can really share anything. Yeah. And I think it's hard to know what to say in that situation, but also it's hard to know how to advise people on how to act towards people, because it's a tough dance to have to like balance.
We have another half hour. So if you can make it 20 minutes.
Okay. Lovely. Alrighty. So what was I just saying?
My coughing fit.
What was I saying again? I forgot what I was saying.
The conversation was about
Sounds good.
Freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. Yes. Okay. Super. So now I'm going to bounce forward again. You are now working freelance. So you've done your 15 years. You've done your grind. Your honest grind for 15
part of my
years.
soul left in London. Yeah.
Yep. You're slowly rebuilding now.
Yeah.
And you were taking on a lot more PT clients and doing your fitness classes and that sort of stuff. Were you, for the fitness classes, did you have people like come to your house, or was it like an online thing, or?
No, it was still in London, so I was commuting up to do those classes.
You're always commuting. Oh my gosh.
But eventually I did withdraw from that. So it's also, I'm probably spending more money on the train fare than I was actually getting paid. But my one-to-one was really growing, and I did actually start to sort of look around where we were about doing fitness classes. But then we decided to move to Brighton.
And what kind of initiated that?
The move?
Yeah.
Lots of things really. We'd lived in the same area for a long time. We wanted to do another project with the house renovations. Yeah, we wanted to be by the sea.
Amazing. So how long have you been here for?
I think it'll be 10 years in November.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so you moved to Brighton, and then the birth of a few things start happening. Yeah. So where did the initial idea come for the box?
It's always been there.
It's always been there?
It's always been there in the back of my mind. And Giles always says to me, we went on holiday with a couple of friends. It was their like 25th birthday or something, and apparently I was really drunk one night. It's like, you just watch, I'm going to open my own studio one day. Don't remember that conversation. But it's definitely always been there, and it's been something that I've wanted to do, but more not necessarily for myself, to offer like a really safe space for people to train, because you know, men and women feel intimidated by the word gym and what they should be doing. And, you know, you don't have to go to the gym either to be able to actually live a fulfilling, well-being, healthy lifestyle. There's so many different avenues that you can go down. So I was really just wanting to do something to, I guess, help people find their true voice when it comes to them.
Have you ever been intimidated going into a gym environment?
No,
No.
I'm like, move out of the way.
I've got this.
But I can absolutely see it. And what I find frustrating is that all the lightweights are still pink in certain gyms. I'm like, come on, guys, like, come on. And I have been in various situations, mainly when I was working on the magazine, and we would do fitness shoots, and we're there with very, very well-known personal trainers, you know, globally known, and we'd be moving stuff around, and they were like, oh no, don't worry about that, like, you know, when you can't lift that up, like very like prejudging because of I'm like 5 foot nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, mate, I've got that. It's fine. Like, don't judge me.
Yeah.
And I think that is there, unfortunately, in a lot of studios, a lot of gyms, and it puts people off, and I just find that really, it's really sad, because the feeling that you can get from having a really good session, whether it's a fitness class, going out for a run, lifting weights, whatever it is, like, you just can't beat it.
It's interesting you say the whole pink weight thing, because that like in a way almost connects to when your mom would say, I'm going on a diet.
Yeah.
It's like these unspoken things that make you feel like you should be in a specific place.
Yeah.
It's like, that's where you should be. The pink weight section.
Yeah.
That's where you should be.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it also, on the flip side, it's like men can no longer start there.
Yeah.
It's like, if that's,
both ways.
Yeah. Which is just, it's interesting to kind of have this eye to critique it from a different perspective. And so this idea has always been bubbling, essentially.
Yeah.
Did you always know it was going to be a boxing studio, or was it just some sort of studio?
No, just some sort of studio. I mean, I fell in love with boxing years and years ago, and I just found it a really positive outlet. I think I went to quite a few boxing classes in my teens, and you know, sort of what I was going through with the family. For me, it was just a safe space to like let it all out, without taking it on the streets effectively. But I love the fact that a boxing class, whether you're sparring or kind of like going down, I guess, the boxercise route, which we're not, but you use pretty much every receptor in your body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a 45-minute or a 60-minute sparring session can go like that because you have to be switched on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like a dance class where a little step out is fine. You know, if you're slipping the wrong way, and you'll know about it.
Yeah.
So you have to be alert the entire time, and
Mm-hmm.
you've done a head to toe workout, you've worked your cardiovascular to the max,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I think it's an amazing thing that everybody should get into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what were kind of because obviously you're an entrepreneur, you're a very successful woman. What were the steps needed to establish this business?
So many. So the initial kind of idea actually started, so when we moved to Brighton,
Mm-hmm.
I then contacted a local studio
Mhm.
here. So I started teaching classes there, and they had an amazing community, like so many people.
Mm-hmm.
I got to know a lot of people there, and formed quite a good relationship with the owner, and just sort of giving him lots of ideas, like, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And you know, he was doing them, but executing them in a very different way to how I would. And then he did actually eventually ask, he said, would you be interested in like coming, you know, into the business and
Mhm.
being a partner, etc. And I was like, oh, never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's investigate, shall we?
Yeah.
It didn't quite work out because I looked at the books and thought, no, maybe not. And then actually somebody who went to that studio was also interested just in the business side.
Yeah.
And we just got chatting. We went, why don't we do it? And we literally wrote our business plan in the pub.
Oh my God.
And then it took us, the longest part was to actually find a venue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the setting up the business itself, registering at the company's house, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I did obviously all the branding from being a creative side, which was just incredible. Absolutely loved it. Building the website, etc. Finding the staff, all of that side was fine. But finding a venue that we could afford, because we had no money at all,
Mm-hmm.
was really tough. And in Brighton, it's really expensive there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, you know, lack of space. And so we eventually actually approached an existing studio
Oh, wow.
and ended up using their, I guess, kind of like their dance space. It was because they had a sprung floor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it worked out in the end.
Mhm.
So we actually created a separate entrance, so we looked like a separate entity to them
Yeah.
completely. And it was different competition to them, and it was fine. And
Yeah.
they're brilliant. I still speak to them all the time. Toby's amazing.
That's lovely.
And yeah, it went from there, really.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that's cool that you were like in a space. Like I think people often get caught up that they have to have their own thing, have their own space. But I would never even have imagined the fact that you could kind of join forces, and it benefits the other studio as well,
Yeah.
because you know their rent's cheaper,
Yeah.
they're getting more clientele potentially.
Mhm.
So that's a really clever way to do it, actually.
I think we were desperate.
Yeah.
We were desperate, and I started off actually because when you delve deeper into sort of a company's house, there's a lot of information you can find out if you know people are happy for you to do so. You can sign confidential agreements and not release all the information.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, right, I'm going to look at existing studios, if their leases are coming up or if they're not doing so well, etc.
Mhm.
And that's the avenue that we ended up going down. It was through desperation, really. But
Interesting.
it was something I would definitely advise people to do if they're
Yeah.
struggling to find space.
And in terms of like the financial side, how much money did you actually need to kickstart things?
Yeah. It wasn't a huge amount, to be honest. I mean, we probably put, my business partner at the time and myself, we put our life savings into it, but that was more of the fit out,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously we had to meet certain regulations. The space that we then obviously rented off of them wasn't like fire regulations or anything like that, so it was a full new refit.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously building the website and then getting staff involved. So if I were to put an actual figure on it, it wasn't huge, but it's about 60k.
Okay. And from the point of sitting in the bar, making your plan, to the opening doors, what was the time frame?
It was around 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And were you working at your other job during
Oh,
this
yeah.
time?
Yeah,
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 for sure.
And so was my business partner at the time.
Oh.
She had another job as well.
Wow. Was there any sort of hesitation from yourself or your business partner in terms of like putting this all forward?
Absolutely not. No, we were
No.
like, come on, let's just do it.
Let's just do it.
Yeah. I think I'm one of those people that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I do my due diligence
Mhm.
and calculated risks. But I'm like, you got to try it once.
Yeah.
If you fail, so what? You learn from it. And believe me, there have been a lot of failures. But I think if you're able to pick yourself up and kind of get rid of the ego and be like, okay, that's fine, I've learned, and next time I'll do it better. I say go for it.
That's amazing. So you're in the studio sharing this space. The studio you're at now, is that where you went afterwards?
Yes.
Yes. And how did you come about this one? Were you lease hunting?
Yeah. So it's down the same street.
Oh, that's convenient.
So, it's down the same street. So we were at number 26, now we're at number 20. And number 20 was a sofa shop.
Okay.
And obviously I would cycle past it several times a day. I was like, no one goes in, like nobody. And it wasn't a chain store, so it was an individual shop. So one day I just went and knocked on the door and met the lady who is now my landlord.
Oh my gosh.
And just said, oh, hi, like, how long have you been here? Striked up a conversation with her. Yeah. And just, she was, she's an amazing woman. And found out that they actually own the building.
Wow.
It's a family business, been in the family for years. And I just sort of dropped it into a conversation saying, oh, we own the studio down the road, like come along for a session. Yeah. You can have free membership as you're down the same road as us. And then I just kept popping in and just like striked up a bit of a friendship with her. And then I just said to her, how do you feel about having some money every month? Yeah. And she was just like, what do you mean, Lucy? I was like, well, have you thought about renting the space out? And the conversation grew from there, really. And that process, because that was before COVID, probably took about 4 years.
Wow.
So I definitely would have been in there sooner. But during that 4 years, I brought my business partner out, so it's now 100% me, which was extremely daunting at the time, but probably the best thing we did for both of us. The studio's gone from strength to strength. Yeah. We're now in a space where we have 3 separate studios. One of them I rent out to a reformer Pilates teacher, Ronnie, a dedicated boxing studio upstairs, strength down. So
wow. Yeah. And what caused you to buy out your partner?
Lots of differences.
Yeah.
She wanted out.
Okay.
And that was absolutely fine, because to be honest, when we started it, although we were both really passionate about it, after the initial sort of setup of, getting the systems in place, the legalities, there wasn't really much for her to do other than hit pay on payday.
I see.
So I get the violin out. But I felt like, oh my God, I'm teaching the classes, I'm training the trainers, I'm doing all the social, I'm doing the design, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm like, what are you doing? And we actually I still to say haven't actually taken any money out of the studio, put everything back in. But if we hadn't taken like dividends out, I'm like, we couldn't have done 50-50.
No.
Because what she was putting in compared to me was just, it wasn't equal. And I think that became apparent. And, she was amazing to have around. And then obviously when I brought her out, I was like, oh shit, there's a lot I've got to learn, because she did do the so-called business side of it. And I know how to run a publishing business. I don't know how to run a fitness business. Yeah. But I applied my knowledge from that to this. Yeah. And it was like a steep learning curve. But I feel really proud of myself. Like all of this is me now, and it's quite I just feel really proud. Yeah. Yeah.
You should. You should feel very proud. And I feel like I could just ask you so many questions about this specifically, and perhaps we'll have you on again, because I feel like we could really dive into the building a true business. Because I think that you could probably teach us quite a bit about that, and just the challenges and the hurdles that you'd have to jump. But given the time restraints, I'm going to continue moving on. So you buy out this business, you are doing very well. All these things are happening for you. COVID. How did you survive that?
Feels like a blur.
I know. It really does.
Yeah. So we obviously knew from the government with the guidelines that they were putting out that gymnasiums were going to have to be closed. So we kind of almost got, I guess, a green light before we physically had to close. My trainers were amazing. I was like, guys, let's get into the studio and film content. So we filmed
amazing.
so many hours, like over 70 hours of content.
That's so cool.
That we then put out for free.
Wow.
Looking back now, I'm like, we should have charged for that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think the world was in such a desperate place. It didn't really matter at all. And, you know, I paid my trainers for that. It was fine. And obviously we had to shut the studio. So I put everybody's membership on freeze.
Yeah.
And I think what was the highlight for me that actually made me realise that this is what I want to do is that a massive percentage of our members are like, no, we want to support you because we want to come back to you when
That's amazing.
this disaster stops.
Yeah.
So it was a really it was an emotional time. But weirdly, I don't think I've been that busy ever because we were doing online classes. We could obviously still train people outside.
Yes.
So I was just working back to back.
Oh my God.
And then, you know, hearing all these people that are like on furlough and we have the best summer ever and they're doing nothing. I'm like, what am I doing?
I'm going crazy.
Absolutely exhausted. Like, you know, lost loads of weight because I was training all the time.
Yeah.
Not fueling myself because I was working all the time. I was like, this is not a good place to be.
Did the feelings from when you were younger get triggered when that happened?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. There's certain situations when they do, but I'm mindful of it now and I kind of hear the noise.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I suppose we're probably on to the last question, which is very sad. But last two questions. Because this studio has, I believe, it won Best Gym in Brighton. It did.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Congratulations. And it's just such an amazing space. Like you have cultivated a really nice community, and it's also a gorgeous studio, might I add. But what are kind of the future? What's the future looking like? Perhaps quitting your other job, or are you gonna always be a two job girl?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like I sort of touched on earlier, potentially. I think I might have to give one of them up because I'm just working. I am working a lot. I can work my own hours. Because I love it so much, I do put a lot of effort into it. But in the last year, we've just become an academy at Fox.
Very cool.
So if you wanted to qualify as a level 3 PT, you can now come do that with us.
Amazing.
So we're the only studio in like a 15-mile radius as well in Brighton. So
wow.
we signed exclusivity with the governing body we work with. And we've done 2 courses this year.
Nice.
And it's brilliant. So I think definitely to give us a little bit more kudos and standing out for just being a fitness studio. The education side is definitely something that I would really be interested in growing.
That's amazing. That's really cool. And if you could give your little self any advice, any career advice, what would it be?
Oh, wow. There's so much. There's so much I want to tell her, honestly, so much. I would still say go for it. Yeah. I really would, because I would hate to, I mean, you never know what's going to happen with life, right? You never know, but I would hate to be that person that wakes up and be like, oh, if only. If only I did that. And constantly question like what my life would be if I took a different avenue. I think trust your instinct. And that's what I've always done. And even when Giles and I have been buying property, like if I feel it in my gut, I know it's right.
Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and leave a comment or rating, as it really helps us grow. You'll find any relevant resources in the description below, including details about our guest, links to anything we mention, and our application if you'd like to be a guest on Seasoned Professional. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being a part of our community, and I cannot wait to see you next week. Bye-bye.